The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Geopolitics Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost of Base Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media, April 24th, 2026. Happy Friday. Kind of went down a strange and crazy rabbit hole earlier that kind of like threw off my entire agenda for the show, because I kind of like wanted to just start there. It's actually really wild. And honestly, after I started like looking into it, my timeline started getting flooded with a lot of this information, and so that makes me a little suspicious about it. But you know, it's just information, so we'll go ahead and just share it, and we'll see. You know, we won't marry ourselves to anything, but it is compelling. It's definitely compelling, and there's definitely supporting facts to support it. So let's see. Let me just pull up the post that I saw that kind of made me start to go down the rabbit hole. Where is it? Stand by for processing. Right here. Okay. So there's a post I saw earlier that is this one. And again, we have like, there's the theory of my theory of the case has been that I think that this war that's being waged in the Middle East, to whatever extent it's actually being waged, I do think both sides probably are taking damage to some extent. But I do think that the real war is being waged, I think, against the Israeli regime, with Iran kind of being the proxy, right? Donald Trump's proxy. And Trump is kind of pretending, right, to be on Israel's side in order to kind of bait them deeper and deeper into this conflict. And the whole purpose, of course, is to thwart and subvert undermine the Greater Israel Project. Okay, so I saw this post, interesting post. It says from Mavi Turk, it's with the Turkish flag. It says, Iran, what happened after the U.S.-Israel war? What happened in 3 months? And then to give some bullet points, it says, Turkey's dams, which have been sounding the alarm for nearly 15 years, have begun to fill up. Iran's dams, which have been sounding the red alarm for half a century, have begun to fill up. Iraq's dams, which have been sounding the red alarm for a quarter century, have begun to fill up. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers have begun to overflow. Lakes dried up by drought have come back to life. Lost creatures have started to return. And the reason was the radar base that Iran destroyed. And then there's videos, or actually, I'm sorry, it's one video, but it's 4 different video. It's 4 different squares in the video inlaid, showing dams, just like water just flowing through dams. And it's Turkey, Iraq, Iran, in Tigris Euphrates. Let me look up where that is real quick. I think that's Kurdistan. So I think that's somewhere in either eastern Turkey or northern Iraq, maybe northeastern Syria. Interesting. It's an interesting thing. And then the follow-up post, which is not from the original poster, but from another person, Skateboy 77, Thrash 77. It says, this is a translated Iranian post from Arabic to English. It was long. I apologize. I had to break Grok's translation up into screenshots. 8 images in total, in addition to the first 4 shown here. Please see my own comment to this post to continue. It's worth it. And then he goes on to say, I never said I could verify the post. I just presented a post I saw for consideration. Then he goes on to talk about HARP. Yes, HARP has been perfected in Alaska for years. Why develop a technology just to continue using it there? Why not? Would it not be something to be exported and used elsewhere, desired once proven? And then he goes on to say, this is just a theory. He's like, I'm just presenting information, and obviously people are getting upset about it. Here's what he translated. So he translated the post that I just read, like the original one, and then he went and grabbed some data. It says, when Iran hit the secret cloud seeding and cloud pulling center in the UAE, which is on April 13th, 2026, it wasn't just targeting a base. It struck the very heart of the weather control system that had been deliberately drying out Iraq and eastern Iran. The result was a sudden and rapid climate shift. And then there's some bullet points. Rain returned to Iran and Iraq after years of drought. Temperatures dropped by as much as 5 degrees Celsius. Floods returned and partially saved the agricultural season. Wind patterns changed and clouds came back to the region. The next image says, this is the exposure of the secret climate conspiracy that had been operating in the shadows. The secret cloud seeding and cloud pulling center in the UAE was part of a global weather control network. Its declared goals was to increase rainfall in the UAE for agriculture and tourism, reduce heat in hot areas. Its hidden goals was to pull clouds from Iraq and eastern Iran toward the Gulf, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, deliberately dry up rivers and wells in Iraq and Iran, destroy agriculture and livestock to create famine and a demographic crisis. The next image, the last image, says also to weaken Iran and Iraq and to turn them into dependents of the Gulf states in America. The mechanism was catalytic, spraying chemtrails, including aluminum oxide, silver iodine, potassium perchlorate over the skies of Iraq and Iran, directing HARP-type waves at these materials to heat the ionosphere and prevent cloud formation, altering wind paths to divert moisture toward the Gulf, leaving Iran and Iraq parched. It wasn't nature, it was systematic engineered destruction. When Iran destroyed the center, the operation stopped abruptly. Okay, so basically the theory that's being laid out here is that that radar system that was destroyed in Qatar, and I believe there was another one that was destroyed in the UAE, was not just a radar system, and this is something that's been confirmed, I mean, by all media, like Western media, I think has talked about this. These are the allegation is that they're radar systems, I think the official narrative is that they're radar systems that were used by the Iron Dome to detect missiles flying over the Persian Gulf from Iran and other places, potentially toward Israel, right? And that was like an early warning system. That's what they said. And what this theory is saying is that the radar towers were also part of this HARP weapon that was being used to weaponize the Middle East. Okay, so that's the theory. And in order to kind of substantiate the theory or debunk it, we kind of have to go and look at data and be like, all right, is there actual data to support this theory? It's a fascinating theory, and it would potentially support the idea that this conflict was necessary in order to liberate the Middle East. Because if parts of the Middle East are being intentionally destroyed via weather patterns, by weaponized science, then taking those systems out, especially if those systems are under the control of nefarious entities that would be affiliated with like the Western military industrial complex, then taking those systems out, I think would be necessary. So let's start with let's just start with the basics. Let's just go look at geography. I think geography is always the best place to start, right? So here is a map that I produced, that I had AI produce, of the Tigris Euphrates River Basin and watershed. Okay. And it shows topography. It shows the rivers. Here is a legend that kind of gives you, a key that kind of shows you where we're looking. We're looking at this area that extends from the Persian Gulf up to Turkey, right? The Tigris Euphrates rivers. Actually, this little key isn't totally accurate because it doesn't capture the Euphrates River entirely, but or maybe it does. There's another river down here that I think it's not grabbing. Yeah, it has it right here in the map. But you can see that the brown is obviously the highest points in the mountains. The lowest points are the light blue and the blue on the land. That would be like below sea level. The green would be right at sea level, right? And then so the Tigris and Euphrates, of course, being a river system that is considered the cradle of life. This is where civilization began, along with the Nile River, the Indus River Valley in Pakistan/India, and the Yellow River in China. But this is considered like the Fertile Crescent, extending from Basra down here in Iraq, going up towards Mosul, and then turning back towards like the Levant. That's considered the Fertile Crescent. This is where agriculture first was developed, right? And people started, nomads and Bedouins started settling down and making farms. They started cultivating methods of farming, right? Domesticating animals. That all started around here, as well as down the Nile. And so the allegation, of course, is that the rains have dried up here. So the first thing that we can establish to substantiate the theory is that in that original post, it listed Iraq, Syria, Turkey, and Kurdistan. Kurdistan being between Turkey, Iran, and Iraq, and Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. It listed those basically four places: Iran, Turkey, Iraq, and Syria. It seemed as places where these dams were overflowing with water, and that would line up with the Tigris Euphrates River system. Now, Iran is not necessarily part of. The Iranian mountains obviously feed into the Tigris Euphrates, but like these Zagros mountains, but like Kirkuk, that's like, this is the border basically. As I believe we're looking at kind of the border down here at Shat al-Arab. I think like these mountains are technically in Iran, but they are, feeding this river system. So there could potentially be dams there. So that part of the theory, I think we could say, is substantiated. Like that geographically, this makes sense. If the theory is that Iran and Iraq were the ones suffering the most, Syria was also suffering. Those are all part of the Tigris Euphrates watershed and the river basin. Okay, so then the next question is, have these areas been experiencing historic drought? And if they have, what is the time frame, the time frame. And so here is a map that I had produced based on a bunch of articles that I found. I'll pull the articles up. We can kind of look at them individually. And, we'll want to validate the data that the AI has put in here. But this is just a visualization tool to help us kind of understand high level what is being asserted here. So the Middle East rainfall recovery map. And let me see if I can make this a little bigger for y'all to see right here. There we go. Okay, so green and light green would indicate much above normal, right? And then yellow would be near normal, orange would be below normal, red would be much below normal, and gray is no data. And this is the updated per May of 2026. That's a little goofy because it's only April, but maybe there's some projections here. But it goes country by country, and it says, so let's do the country summary, and then we'll go look at these articles that I have. It says in Turkey is recovering. It says it's wet. They had a wetter winter and spring. Reservoir levels improving in many basins. Iraq is recovering. Heavier rain since late 2025. Rivers and dams have risen significantly. Iran is experiencing a severe drought. Rainfall is down 40 to 45% below normal in 2025. So they're saying in 2025, they were down up to 45% of what they normally get. Reservoirs at critical levels. Water crisis is continuing. Syria is still in a drought, below normal rainfall. Severe drought impacts persist. Recovery will take several wet seasons. Jordan, Lebanon, and Israel is mixed. So it says some wet periods brought relief in places, but overall rainfall below normal. Drought ongoing. Saudi Arabia is mixed. Rainfall mostly near normal with local wet events. Drought easing in some regions. Saudi Arabia is a different case study. I can talk a little bit about that, but they have their own irrigation project going on that is resulting in more green space developing in their deserts. Egypt is mixed, but that's kind of beyond. That's definitely not in the Tigris Euphrates river system, nor is Saudi Arabia. Yemen is not. Yemen and the Gulf states, they're not really part of this. Nor is Afghanistan. So let's go look at some of these articles that I've pulled up. So this one is Le Monde. It's a French outlet. It says Iran. This is from November of 2025, so back in November, and it says Iran faces its worst drought in 6 decades. Considers evacuating Tehran. The country is experiencing its 6th consecutive year of drought, with reservoirs supplying several major cities, including the capital, at record lows. This unprecedented situation is linked to climate change, but is also the result of poor water management. So this is a familiar story because remember, we saw this in LA. Remember LA, the Palisade fires, and that was blamed on the fact that the city had mismanaged their water resources. There were allegations that maybe HARP was used to dry up those reservoirs. The city wasn't running the water, or that family that owned that pistachio farm, I think it was, that they had like control of the water, and the water wasn't being released for the fire department to use. There was a whole scandal about that. And actually, Karen Bass and that whole story seems to be coming back coincidentally in the past few days. That's interesting. But it says Iran is currently enduring its 6th consecutive year of drought, prompting authorities to consider evacuating Tehran, the Iranian capital, and its suburbs, an area home to more than 14 million people. After another dry, scorching summer, autumn has brought exceptionally low rainfall to this country. With a continental climate, and the nation's main dams have dropped to critical levels. According to Sadiq Zayan, director of the National Meteorological Forecasting Center, quoted by Iranian news agencies on November 8th, rainfall has decreased by nearly 86% nationwide since the start of the hydrological year beginning September 23rd, and by 96% in Tehran, where only 1 millimeter of rain has fallen, a phenomenon that has not been seen in a century, as the average annual rainfall from 1991 to 2020 was 220 millimeters. That's insane. So Tehran between 91 and 2020 was getting 220 millimeters on average. And in 2025, they only got 1 millimeter. That's wild. It says on November 6th, Hashim Amini, Director General of the state-owned company in charge of drinking water and wastewater management, acknowledged that reservoirs in 5 dams supplying the capital are at their lowest point in 60 years, a quote-unquote, a situation we have never seen before, he said, stating, according to the state company, the dams are filled to no more than, this is archives. Let me see, this is behind a paywall. Let me see if I can archive it. Says, according to the state, the dams are filled to no more than 11% of their capacity. So they're at 11%. This is back in November of their capacity. Videos posted on social media show the bottom of the Latian Dam completely exposed, while authorities in Al Borz province, where the Karaj Dam is located, confirm it now holds only 7% of its capacity. The state of surface water resources is critical and extremely fragile, added Amini. In Tehran, the majority of the city's supply now depends on groundwater, whose levels are dropping dangerously. According to Mohsin Ardakhani, head of the Tehran Province Water and Wastewater Company, residents have already reduced their water consumption by 10 to 12% over 7 months, but a 20% reduction will be needed to cope with the ongoing drought. He estimated that only then could the city maintain a stable supply network for another 2 months. Again, and it goes on, but I think you kind of get the point that that this crisis appears to be real in Iran. Now, I think later in the article, it looks like this is a French outlet. Remember, they are blaming climate change. They're also blaming the IRGC and like the mismanagement of water. Here is it says the dried up Khan River west of Tehran on November 9th. You can see that picture. This isn't a river. It's barely even a creek. Okay, so that there's one. So now we can let's see. Here's the Center for Strategic and International Studies. This is the CSIS. This is a think tank for sure, like a neocon think tank. That is absolutely nefarious. So we should be aware of that as we read this. But it says the future of the Euphrates River in Syria, a cradle of civilization cries for help. That's the title. And it says the Euphrates River is at risk of drying up due to climate change. Here we go. Temperatures in northeastern Syria have risen by 1 degree Celsius compared to 100 years ago, and an average rainfall has decreased by 18 millimeters per month per century. Remember, according to that X post, it says that, and it looks like it was a screenshot of an AI that had aggregated some data for him. Since this radar system was destroyed 11 days ago, it says that the temperature has dropped 5 degrees Celsius in those areas. It says average rainfall has decreased by 18 millimeters per month per century. The Iraqi Ministry of Water Resources warns that the country could be dry by 2040. Human impact on the environment could be driving the Euphrates, a cradle of civilization, to destruction, forcing people to leave a place they have called home for thousands of years. And then there's a video they have. So let's just look at the video first.
The banks of the Euphrates River in Syria are rich in history. Together with the Tigris, the rivers formed the Fertile Crescent and gave rise to the earliest civilizations and cultures. But today, similar to rivers around the world, human actions are threatening the future of this ancient waterway. The modern Euphrates runs through 3 countries: Syria, Iraq, and Turkey. It is a vital source of water for over 23 million people who live in its basin.
The Euphrates has been this lifeblood to not only Syria and Turkey and Iraq, but to really an entire region. It continues to be of critical importance to not just farmers, but people who need clean water in a relatively dry country like Syria.
The Euphrates River runs through a hotbed of regional conflict. In the late 20th century, Turkey built several dams to secure its access to water from the Euphrates and to generate electricity. This limited the flow of water downstream to Syria and Iraq. Euphrates and to secure.
Okay, so they're showing that right here. I just want to point this out. They're showing the before and,
to generate
after.
Electricity.
So here's 1983, the Euphrates River, Turkey. So this is the Euphrates River up in Turkey. Okay.
limited the flow of water.
And then it jumps to 2020 to 2002. So 19 years later, you now have these large reservoirs. You have the rivers are much larger, and that's because of the dams they've built to dam up the water
downstream to Syria and Iraq. Later, during the Syrian civil war, armed groups such as ISIS sought to control key river infrastructure in Syria to gain a strategic advantage in the region.
Syria really stands out for the complexity of the conflict. There are so many actors. There are domestic actors, there are regional actors. You look at Turkey, Iran, the US, all of the neighboring countries have an interest in what's happening in northeastern Syria. So Syria is extraordinarily complex. And then you add climate change.
Drought brought on by climate change has significantly decreased rainfall in the river basin. As a result, the water levels in the Euphrates have fallen to historically low levels.
The problem with climate change as it relates to the Euphrates and in much of the world is that the new normal is volatility. And if you're a farmer and you live next to a river and you rely on some sort of predictable rainfall, if that predictability goes away, then you're going to be facing one crisis after another.
Without crucial access to water for irrigation, hydration, and sanitation, local populations are at risk of disease and displacement. Interventions from regional and local partners is necessary to prevent the Euphrates, with its rich history and present-day communities that rely on it, from drying up entirely.
Yeah, so this is obviously like this is a emotional blackmail, and they're basically talking about, oh, this is so tragic because of humans. Of course, humans in Turkey built dams, and because they built dams and then ISIS took over dams, this is so terrible. And then plus climate change, oh no, like what a disaster. So if you really stop and you think about it, the campaign to destroy Syria, which is what the Syrian civil war is all about, and then started this mass migration crisis in 2011, 2012. That was the creation of ISIS by Obama and Netanyahu, right, working together. They did that, but also in partnership with NATO, in partnership with the Gulf states, the Gulf Arab states. If the purpose was to drive as many people out of Syria and Iraq as possible, it would make sense to me that they would also like use weather, right? Weather manipulation to dry up the river basins and make less food available, make less water available, make the countries like less inhabitable, and that would push more and more people. The people in the cities, I think, were the first to flee because that's where ISIS goes into, and they're taking over these cities. But then the people in the country who might be more inclined to stay, if they don't have any water, like they might be forced to leave, right? It's like, because you're going to die in the desert if you don't have water. So yeah, this is it would make sense that would be like a two-prong approach, or three-prong, four-prong, however you want to look at it, of how you would attack this region if you were strategically trying to destroy it. Let me see. There's a few more articles. There's a video that I want to play, but before I do that, there's a few more articles that I want to show you. So here's one from Prevention Web from November 21st. This was published a week after the other one that we just read, and it says November 21st, 2025, human-induced climate change compounded by socioeconomic water stressors increased severity of 5-year drought in Iran and Euphrates and Tigris Basin. And so this is saying the exact same thing that the other one did. It's presenting more data. We have heat maps, we have weather maps here. This is a much more scientific presentation in terms of the analysis, and there's appears to be much more technical data with like temperature measurements. It's showing climatology between 1981 and 2010, U.S. Global Drought Monitor, right? So here's some charts and graphs showing how the rainfall has decreased. There's less water in it, right? Here's the here's this data set. It looks like is Estimated return periods of water in over Tehran or over Iran and the Tigris Euphrates Basin, along with the respective changes in probability ratio magnitudes associated with a 1.3 Celsius of global warming. Because remember, they said, oh, the temperature has gone up 1 Celsius, right? And so the data sets are showing that these changes in magnitude, and this is like over 8-year period, over a 4-year period, over a 6-year period, over a 3-year period, and all of them are looking. The first two looks like is Iran, and these are extreme. So these are listed as extreme droughts, right? And then these last two are the Tigris Euphrates, and one of them is extreme, and the other one comes back as exceptional. And I think these are measurements of like the drought, right? Let's see, we have. This is February 25th. So this is from Rudal. I'm not familiar with this site, but this is looks like a Middle East media outlet. So this would have been 3 days before the Iran war began. And it says water levels of Tigris River triple as Iraq enters key storage phase. Says an advisor to Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani said Wednesday the country is experiencing a significant improvement in water levels this year, with the Tigris River's flow tripling compared to last year amid increased rainfall and full water releases from Turkey. Okay, so I think right there, that last part is the key element, is that Turkey is releasing a lot of water, and that's coming down the river and allowing the river in Iraq to rise. Tehran al-Mufti, the Iraqi prime minister's advisor for water affairs, told Rudal that the combination of these releases with this year's rain and snow has increased the water level of the Tigris River threefold compared to last year. Okay, so it looks like maybe Iraq and Syria have seen improvement in the last year since what's his name? Jelani took over. Remember, he takes over from Assad. He overthrows Assad in December 2024, right? And all of a sudden now Syria and Iraq is having a much better rainfall. That's interesting. And again, that like this data that is being presented here, it says for the past 3 weeks, Mufti said water levels in the Tigris River and at Mosul Dam, Iraq's largest, have been in a very good state. The Euphrates River is currently at a good level, but he expects further improvement in the coming spring months. Iraq relies heavily on the Tigris Euphrates rivers, both of which originate in Turkey. However, large-scale Turkish dam projects, including the Southeastern Anatolia project, have significantly reduced downstream water flow, exacerbating drought, desertification, and environmental degradation. In November last year, Iraq and Turkey signed the implementation mechanism of the Framework Water Cooperation Agreement. A deal, officials say, aims to provide sustainable solutions to Iraq's worsening water crisis. So there you go. There you have cooperation between the governments to improve the water situation in Iraq. And again, what is being presented here aligns with the map that we saw here, because remember, this map, which is supposed to be somewhat current based on the data that I asked the AI to consider, it shows Iraq and Turkey in the green, right? So Iraq and Turkey are recovering, like they're in a state of recovery. It says Iran is in a severe drought and Syria is still in a drought. So Syria is still struggling, and Iran is in a really, really bad situation, all right, as of right now. So again, the data appears to be supported. So far, it is supporting. It's supporting that. Okay, so here's another article from Nordic Monitor. This is from March 20th, 2026. So from about a month ago. Turkey unveils water strategy, tightening control over rivers feeding the Middle East. Turkey has unveiled a sweeping 10-year national water strategy that will shape how rivers flow into the Middle East are managed as Ankara moves to reduce domestic consumption while strengthening control over water resources that originate within its borders. The National Water Plan for 2026 to 2035 entered into force after being approved by presidential decree and published in the Official Gazette on March 14th. Prepared by the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, the plan sets out a long-term framework for managing the country's rivers, reservoirs, and water infrastructure. Under the strategy, losses in drinking water networks are expected to fall to 25% by 2030 and to 10% by 2050, Daily water consumption per person is targeted to drop to 120 liters by 2030 and 100 liters by 2050. Industry will also be expected to reuse more water. The plan aims to increase industrial water recovery to 30% by 2030 and 50% by 2050. Agriculture remains the largest consumer of water in Turkey. The strategy seeks to raise irrigation efficiency to 60% by 2030 and 65% by 2050 as part of a broader effort to reduce water losses while maintaining agricultural production. So basically, they're going to improve their farming methods, improve their irrigation methods, be more efficient, use less energy, use less water, and that should improve the amount of water that's then available for drinking, and then downstream to the other to Syria and Iraq. Okay. And I think I have one more. Okay, so yeah, this is from the Famine Early Warning Systems Network. It says, is this Afghanistan? If this is Afghanistan, then this is no good for us. I think, it looks like this is Afghanistan, but it does say favorable March precipitation supports wheat planting, and I mean Afghanistan shares a border with Iran, so if they had favorable March precipitation, then maybe Iran did as well. Let me see if I can pull up Iraq. Looks like their most recent report was back in October. And in October, they were saying food security impacts of the drought in Iraq. So they're talking about the drought in Iraq as well. If I go to Iran, June 26, 2025, it basically is just talking about the conflicts. They don't really give any data. Okay. And then the other one is, Europe dry to drought risk. Middle East is shifting to stormy. And this is published on March 13th, 2026. And then right here, this is March 20th, 2026 from the World Resources Institute. Iran war could worsen Middle East water woes. WRI water expert Liz Sokoshia explains how the war in Iran could intensify water crises, potentially amplifying risks to food security, energy, and stability across the Middle East. Okay. It says Iran was already on the edge of a water crisis when the conflict began on February 28th. After 5 consecutive years of drought and years of unsustainable water use, Iran is moving toward what experts call water bankruptcy. Just last year, the capital, Tehran, came close to running out of water. Farmers took to the streets to protest water shortages and alleged mismanagement. Conflicts like the current war in Iran can worsen these water challenges, not only nationally, but also across the region. Research shows that conflict can amplify existing risks associated with water scarcity and transform them into larger security emergencies, threatening food security, energy, and health. And then it goes on, why is Iran so water stressed? It says the Middle East is the most water-stressed region on the planet. About 83% of its population is exposed to extremely high water stress, a figure expected to reach 100% by 2050. Iran sits at the sharp end of this trend. I just want to scroll through to see what is the reason they're giving. So again, like all of the globalist, like hegemonic, uniparty media apparatus and NGOs, they're all blaming this on climate change, of course, but they're also blaming it on mismanagement by governments that they don't like, the Iranian government. All right. So they're saying that is the reason. They're also saying that right here it says, in addition, let's see, Iran has also abandoned traditional water management practices, including in particular the Quanat system, a gravity-fed network of underground channels that sustainably draws on groundwater in favor of increasing diesel-powered deep tube wells. I'll explain to you what the Quanat system is in a minute. This transition has caused saltwater intrusion into groundwater, compromising already limited reserves, as well as land subsidence that threatens groundwater restoration and higher pumping costs. In addition, widespread dam building has increased evaporation, reducing freshwater supplies. In Tehran, so much water has been pumped from aquifers that parts of the city are sinking by more than 10 inches a year. And then it gives a map, and you can see the map here. says the Middle East and North Africa is the most water-stressed region in the world, and you can definitely see the concentration in Iran, extremely high. That dark red, you can see it's in Iraq and in Syria as well. Turkey doesn't seem to be included in this, but it does go down to Afghanistan, extremely high. It goes down to India, extremely high. Yeah, so it does appear that this is real. Here is from NASA. This is back in 2016. So this is 10 years ago, March of 2016. NASA finds the drought in the Eastern Mediterranean is the worst in 900 years. So again, whether or not that's true or not, that's what they're asserting. 10 years ago, they were saying that the Middle East was already in the worst drought it's ever seen in 900 years. That could be fake news, but that's what they were saying 10 years ago. And then here's September of 2025 from the AP. Worst drought in decades is threatening Syria's fragile recovery from years of civil war. Here is, oops, what did I just do there? Here is Reuters from December of 2025. Iraq's dreams of wheat independence dashed by the water crisis. Oh no, they can't grow food because they don't have any water. Yeah, and then here's the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. I mean, this is about as deep state as it gets, the Carnegie Institute. It says the looming climate and water crisis in the Middle East and North Africa. So again, just more of the same. Like, this is just evidence that we have that the theory that we looked at the very beginning of the show, there's substantial evidence to demonstrate that there is a water crisis and has been a water crisis in the Tigris Euphrates River Basin for the past several years. And it appears that it goes back decades, but it's gotten really bad in the past 5 or 6 years. Ever since basically Donald Trump's first term. Okay. And certainly since the beginning of the Syrian civil war in 2011. And that would be also the Arab Spring. So now I want to play a video from my friend Kevork Almazian. I've done shows with him before. He is a Syrian Christian. He's originally, I think, ethnically he is a Armenian, but he was born and raised in Syria. His family was driven out of Syria in 2012 by ISIS. His brother was kidnapped by ISIS. They moved to Germany, and he's been living in Germany ever since. And he's been he does what we do. He's been a podcaster in Germany, focusing on Syria and talking about the problems in Syria for a number of years. But here's a video that he put out a year ago where he explained the trillions of dollars that were dedicated to the destruction of Syria and Assad. And I think this is a really important video to watch here.
He's busy with the Ukraine war. The former Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Qatar, Hamad bin Jassim, dropped a few bombshells on a national Qatari TV. A few years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago, Hamad bin Jassim again appeared on a Qatari TV, and he described Syria as a prey. And he said that back then, he mentioned specifically Saudi Arabia and Qatar. He said, while we were fighting over the prey has escaped while we are still fighting for it. Maybe he also meant President Bashar al-Assad, but that's how he described it. Now, he's again dropping a few bombshells, and he said clearly that there were 2 operational rooms that anyone who followed the Syrian war know that there were 2 military operational rooms, one in Jordan and one in Turkey. The one in Jordan called MOK, and the one in Turkey called MOM. And these operational rooms consisted of delegations, security and military delegations from the United States, from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from Jordan, and in also Israel, but they don't mention it, also other regional and international powers. And the duty of these operational rooms were to coordinate the military support, the supply of weaponry, the training, the vetting of the so-called rebels, right? And we all know how it ended up: creation of Al-Nusra Front, ISIS, and other radical jihadi groups in Syria. Maybe that was the intention to begin with. In this interview, he says that Qatar was in charge of the Syrian File in the first few months of the war. It was in 2013 when the father of the current emir, father of Tamim, he was in charge and he resigned. Also, I think that he was under American pressure and he resigned to his son Tamim. And when he resigned, the Syrian file has been moved from Qatar into the hands of Saudi Arabia. And during this period also, who came as the head of the Saudi intelligence was Emir Bandar bin Sultan, or he's called, or better known as Bandar Bush. Why is that? Because he was the ambassador of Saudi Arabia in the United States for a very...
Okay, so this is really important. I just want to, like, with his accent, it can be a little hard to follow maybe what he's saying, and these names may not be familiar to you all. But I want to make sure that we're tracking what he's saying, because what he's about to explain is really, really important. This is like Book of Trump kind of stuff. Because we're talking about the 2011 to 2015 timeframe here. This would be pre-MBS, pre-King Salman. So at this point, Salman, MBS's father in Saudi Arabia, would be the crown prince. His brother would still be king. Okay, and because we're talking about before 2015, and what he is explaining is he's saying that there is something called the Syria File, and I think last year on this show, I'm pretty sure I played. He put together a show. I believe it was last March 2025, where he this clip of the former defense minister from Qatar. Basically, what happened is the former defense minister kind of saw what was happening in the zeitgeist, and he came out and offered to do a television interview in Qatar, where he came out and he said, look, I see what's happening here. Like Qatar is about to get blamed for basically everything that happened in the Arab Spring and Syrian civil war, and I'm probably going to get blamed as the defense minister. So I want to get out ahead of all this and just kind of disclose that here's what happened. We had this thing called the Syria File. We originally in Qatar were in charge of it. It was a $2 trillion slush fund, basically. That the money was provided by the Gulf Arab states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, as well as Israel, the United States, Turkey, and NATO. So all of those entities, and I guess Jordan was probably in there as well. All those entities were involved in this this slush fund, basically, and they all put money into a pot, $2 trillion total, and the sole purpose of that budget was to overthrow Assad. So $2 trillion were spent on solely just on a single military operation to overthrow the Syrian government, and that was the creation of ISIS. A very large operation that involved overthrowing Gaddafi in Libya, stealing his weapons, sending the weapons up to Turkey, walking them into Syria, giving them to Al-Qaeda and to other, terrorist networks, and then those terrorist networks rebranded as ISIS. The rest is history. I think it's probably reasonable to assume that $2 trillion, you probably could buy a few HARP systems, a few weather modification systems for that. And if your intent is to destabilize this region, then I would think weather modification, with it being a desert, would be a really critical cornerstone of that. And so the Qatari defense minister, the former guy, comes out and he's like, I just want to explain what's happening here, what happened here. We were all working together. It was the United States, it was Israel, it was the Gulf states, it was Turkey, it was NATO. We all put money in. We all were a part of this. It wasn't just Qatar. And then in 2014, after I think it was 2013 or 2014, after two and a half years of failure, what Kevork just explained is that Tamim's father. So this is Tamim. Tamim is this would have been 2013. Tamim is Donald Trump's boy, right? He's Donald Trump's great friend. He's like Donald Trump said in 2017 when Tamim came to the White House. He said famously, or at least to me famously, the media is not going to believe me when I say this, but I've actually known you for a long time. We're actually old friends, and I'm going to help you resolve this conflict with Saudi Arabia that you're having right now, because they were at war, quote unquote, with Saudi Arabia right after MBS becomes the crown prince in June of 2017. And so Tamim, and by the way, the month before that, the sword dance, Tamim and Trump meet in Riyadh. That was when Trump goes and gets the sword dance. And Qatar is the first country to sign a joint counterterrorist agreement with the Trump administration, saying we're going to share everything we know about the terrorist organizations operating in our region. Everything we have on terrorism, we're going to share with you. And we're going to help and coordinate with you to take down ISIS and to take down all these groups. Now, rewind back to 2013. And what happens is that his father, because his father was Hamad, was the one who was in charge. And so when they create the Syria File. And so when Tamim, according to Kevork, and I think Kevork is correct, he says that Hamad is pressured by the U.S. and others to resign and step down and abdicate his throne, which is not something that commonly happens in the Middle East, but it does happen. There are instances of incompetence and failure, and because these quote unquote royal families, these kingdoms are governed much more by meritocracy than you have in medieval Europe. Medieval Europe operated under the mantra of divine right, the divine right of kings, meaning that God had picked this royal bloodline to rule over everybody else. And therefore, even when you have a bad king, it's God's will for you to have a bad king. So you just kind of have to suffer the king until he dies or is killed or whatever. In the Middle East, it's not like that. In the Middle East, it's still a meritocracy. It's an oligarchy. And basically the families can pressure the king to step down, or the emir. In the case of Qatar, they don't have a king. They have an emir, which is, just like a word meaning mayor or like leader. And so, yeah, like they pressure Hamad to step down. Tamim, his son, takes over, right? This is the guy in the picture right here. But at the same time, the Syria File is taken away from Qatar. And they're basically like, y'all are failures, Qatar. You failed to take this $2 trillion budget and overthrow Assad. We're going to give it now to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia now is in charge of the Syria File. Now, remember, at this time, 2013, in my opinion, the quote-unquote white hats are not in charge of Saudi Arabia yet, because Salman has not become king yet. MBS is still just one of his advisors, right? They're relative nobodies. I mean, his father, of course, is crown prince, but the CIA barely knows who MBS is at this point, according to deep state writings and literature and biographies. And then, as Kevork points out in his longer video that he did on this subject, basically he describes it as like an act of God, like it's like providence, the fact that Assad is able to, by himself, only with the help of Hezbollah. So it's just Assad and Hezbollah fighting against this $2 trillion budget that's been thrown at them. Because remember, when this whole thing breaks out in 2011, Vladimir Putin is not president of Russia. Medvedev is, right? And then in 2012, Medvedev revises the constitution of Russia that allows, Putin to come back and serve another term. It basically eliminates term limits for the presidency. Putin comes back in 2012. And then I believe it's not until 2015. I think it's 2015, if I'm not mistaken, that Russia actually sends the Dagestani, the Chechens to Syria to help and assist Assad. So they waited, like Putin waits a few years before he does this. And I think he's playing, there's a calculus there. He doesn't want to escalate, but he's trying to like talk the West out of like the destabilization efforts in the Middle East. So the point is that it's Hezbollah and Assad fighting this regime change operation that's very well funded for like 3 or 4 years before Russia shows up and then fortifies their defenses. Okay. And remember, when Tamim comes in, he's no longer in charge of this operation. The operation now gets passed off to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the guy in Saudi Arabia who's running it is Bandar bin Sultan. As Kevork points out, he's often referred to as bin Bush, son of Bush, because he's so deeply connected to the Bush family and was like clearly involved in like the 9/11 stuff and like all the stuff that the Bushes did in the Middle East, even before 9/11. That's their guy. They're one of their many guys in Saudi Arabia. One of the black hats is this guy Bandar bin Sultan. So he would be a cousin of MBS, an older cousin of MBS, a much older cousin. Okay, so let's go. With that said, let's go back to Kevork and let him finish.
Very long time, and especially under the Bush administration. And he was a close friend with Bush. There were a family relationship between him and Bush. And Bandar bin Sultan, according to Hamad, he called foreign ministers and defense ministers and the directors of intelligence apparatuses of regional countries such as Qatar, such as Jordan, such as Turkey, the United States. He doesn't mention Israel, but I think they were also there. And Bandar bin Sultan, he says that he asked for a budget that amounts to $2 trillion. Guys, this is 2 trillion. We're not talking billions. We're not even talking 20 billions. It's $2 trillion to remove or to overthrow the authority, the political authority in Syria, and to remove Bashar al-Assad from power. But secondly, Hamad bin Jassim also said in the interview that Bandar bin Sultan secured a huge budget. Later, Hamad bin Jassim says that Bandar bin Sultan also planned to assassinate President Bashar al-Assad, and their plan was to strike Damascus with missiles. It seems from Ghouta, Jobar, you remember Harasta, all these areas were occupied by the so-called rebels. And he says that the plan was to strike Damascus heavily with missiles and to create chaos inside the capital city of Damascus, and then attack on the palace of the people, or the people's palace, where Assad works, his office is, and to capture him or assassinate. So the scenario was similar to what they did in Libya with Gaddafi. Later he says the plan has failed.
Okay, yeah. So later he says the plan has failed. And let me see. I think I have... Let's pull that down. Okay, and then I think I have... Let me see. I think I have the other... Okay, so here's the original, like, this is the original, let me see if there's any value in this. Okay, so he's talking about military delegates. Okay, yeah, so it's only 2 minutes, so let me just mute this, and I'll read to you what this guy says. So this is the guy that he was talking about, Hamad bin Jassim. This is the lead. I guess he's the defense minister of Qatar during this time period, during the beginning of the Syrian civil war. And so what he says is military operations rooms, military operations command have been established, and there were military delegates from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Jordan, and the United States. He doesn't mention Israel, as Kevork says, but it's very much implied that Israel is just an extension of the United States. Everything military support was going through this committee, whether here or there. And then the interviewer asks a security committee, of course. He says, yes, a security committee. He says, therefore, it came at a stage where Bandar took charge of the Saudi intelligence and the Syrian File. And the guy clarifies, you mean Emir Bandar bin Sultan? And the guy says, yes, Bandar bin Sultan. And so they show a picture of him. That's his picture. He took charge of this file and began planning how to end the matter. meaning how to take out Assad. So the interviewer asks what matter, and then he says the matter of Bashar al-Assad, on the basis that he will overthrow the Syrian authority within months. Remember, this is still under Obama. Was this, the interviewer asked, was this the wish of Bandar bin Sultan? And he says this, and the Jassim says, this was not the desire of Bandar in Saudi Arabia, but the desire of all of us. And this was the goal because there was a revolution in Syria that demanded the removal of Bashar. This is no longer a Saudi demand alone. I mean, why were there two operations rooms? They existed for this goal. So he's basically saying, he's like, it's not just Qatar, it's not just the Arabs, like us. He's like, the United States and Turkey were also a part of this. Bandar bin Sultan asked for a huge budget in the range of $2 trillion. And then the interviewer says, but you mentioned that you, Qatar, were in charge of the Syrian File. And he said, no, we were in charge of the Syrian File for the first few months. But after Bandar bin Sultan came, he wanted to take charge of the file. A dispute arose between us and Bandar over how to manage the Syrian File. And Bandar secured a huge budget that we did not participate in. So he's claiming that Qatar didn't participate in that. So that's interesting. Like if he's telling the truth, I don't know if he is, but if he's telling the truth that Qatar didn't participate in it, then that would, in a lot of ways, kind of exonerate Tamim of involvement, right? I mean, assuming that this guy's telling the truth. And I'm sorry, I did not have that added to the stage, but you know, you didn't miss anything. There's this guy just speaking. So he's speaking, right? There's the interviewer. And then here is the picture of Bandar bin Sultan. That's the Saudi who takes over, right? And then his claim here at the end is that Qatar did not participate in that So the $2 trillion budget came once this guy took over, circa 2013. Okay, and so my speculation is that if this is all accurate, if this theory that we're looking at, this bigger theory that weather modification systems were weaponized against this area, that was probably a part of this $2 trillion budget, right? All right, so everybody, please hold that thought. Hold the phone. Don't go anywhere. We are going to take a quick commercial break. We'll come back and we'll keep going on this.
In a quiet town at where beards grow wild and lips dare to crack without permission, one woman has suffered.
Hi, I'm Margie, and I'm Jadriet's mother.
But the world would come to know her by another name, Madame Margie, the moistureless.
Jay came home with a lip balm. It's called Soft Disclosure.
With one miraculous application, her power awakened.
Within one day, my lips were healed. It was miraculous.
But salvation came at a cost. For in the shadowed lands known only as Badlands,
you boys at Badlands are so handsome.
she saw potential.
You're covering up your beautiful faces.
And she made her demand.
Shave them all off.
Or face the consequences. Beard oil will not save you now.
And you'll look so much better.
This summer, moisturize wisely and guard your beard. Because Madame Margie, the moistureless, is always watching.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine, Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
It's finally here, our second annual mega sale. This sale only comes around once a year, so take advantage of the best offers ever while you can. For example, save 50% on our Giza Dream bed sheets, as low as $29.98. And for the first time ever on TV, My Pillow mattresses and My Pillow mattress toppers, as low as $99.98. And you save 50% on our Lux Pure 6-piece towel sets. Regular $69.98, now only $39.98. And our best-selling standard My Pillows, regular $49.98, on sale for $17.98. Wait on it, mega sale, only $14.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use this promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. But wait, there's more. To make the mega sale even more special, when you order right now, your order's going to ship absolutely free.
Welcome to Benson Honey Farms, where every jar is pure gold. Benson's Honey is excited to be back on Badlands Media with their honey harvest straight from their Nebraska farm. While they've been busy working to improve our state politics from the ground up, they never forgot the importance of sharing the best honey around. Catch up with Mo on the first episode of America First Stories right here on Badlands Media. Did you know honey isn't just a sweet treat? It's nature's medicine. Perfect for alleviating allergies, soothing up upset stomachs, or as a delicious natural sweetener for baking. Benson Honey is never heated, ensuring you receive it in its pure, raw form, full of natural goodness. At Benson Honey Farms, quality and purity is top priority, and they've committed to providing the finest honey from hive to home. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/honey and use promo code Badlands for 20% off your purchase. Benson Honey Farms, savor the authentic taste of Nebraska and support this America First business. Follow on Facebook at Benson Honey Farms and TikTok at Mo Benson Honey, please. All right, welcome back to the second hour of Geopolitics Ghost. I'm your host, Gordon McCormick, Badlands Media. That's not the right. There we go. Grab the wrong control. Yes, so this is April 24, 2026. Badlands Media, Geopolitics Ghost, and we're going to continue talking about this subject with exploring this theory, which I find pretty interesting, about weather control in the Middle East. So I have a few more things I'm going to share, and then we have other news and other subjects obviously we're going to get into. There's plenty to discuss. I mean, today should really be like a 4-hour show, but it is what it is. Okay, so where we left it, we confirmed that trillions of dollars were dedicated to a military campaign in the Middle East that was targeting Bashar al-Assad to overthrow the Syrian government, and that led to a 15-year civil war, right? And that civil war culminated in December 2024, just a few weeks after President Trump was reelected. And Assad is driven out of Syria, and then we get this new guy, Jelani, right? And Jelani, who is former Al-Qaeda, former ISIS, comes in, and everyone's really scratching their head, being like, wait a minute, this guy's got a $10 million bounty on his head from the State Department. What is going on? And now all of a sudden, we get better water, better rainfall last year in Iraq, in Syria. We get Turkey opening up its dams in releasing water to the Tigris Euphrates River Basin. It seems like it seems like Syria is still struggling a little more than Iraq, but Iran is definitely in like way worse shape than it was 12 months ago. That's, I think, the definitive. We can definitively say that. Okay, so picking up from that point, let's go to what happened in April of 2024. Okay, so in April of 2024, we get this story. And let me pull up. I think this one's probably the best one to start with. And guys, hit the thumbs up while I'm pulling up this page. There we go. Only hit the thumbs up if you want to. You don't have to, but it'd be cool if you did. BBC. So this is April 17th, 2024. It says, what is cloud seeding and did it cause Dubai flooding? And then we get this picture of Dubai and the UAE. And it is like, look, people are up to their knees in water. I remember this specifically. I remember writing about this in the Badlands news brief because I had just started writing for the news brief, I think in March of 2024. And I was like, oh, this is weird. It says Dubai has been hit by record floods over the past 24 hours, sparking misleading speculation about cloud seeding. So how unusual was the rainfall and what were the reasons behind the extreme downpours? How extreme was the rainfall? Dubai is situated on the coast of the United Arab Emirates and is usually very dry, but while it receives less than 100 millimeters, which is 3.9 inches of a year of rainfall on average, it does experience occasional extreme downpours. In the city of Al Ain, just over 62 miles from Dubai, about 10 inches of rain was recorded in just 24 hours. A cutoff low-pressure weather system, which drew in warm, moist air and blocked other weather systems from coming through, was the main cause. Quote, this part of the world is characterized by long periods without rain and then irregular heavy rainfall. But even so, this was a very rare rainfall event, explains Professor Martine Abion, a meteorologist at the University of Reading who has studied rainfall patterns in the Gulf region. I think this is a news story. Yeah, here we go.
We saw an historic rainfall event across United Arab Emirates on Tuesday. Just take one spot. 256 millimeters of rain fell in the space of just one day. That is well over 2 times what Dubai normally gets in the entire year. And the average for April is only around 8 millimeters. This is well above any expectations for rainfall in the region at any time of the year, never mind in April. So what was going on? Well, we had an area of low pressure centered towards the south of the Arabian Peninsula, and that dragged in some moisture-laden air, warm moisture-laden air, all the way through into the Gulf. And it's that which felt the storm clouds, which pummeled not just United Arab Emirates, but from Bahrain through towards Oman, we saw widespread flooding. That all moving on now into parts of Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan too. Now, there has been talks about cloud seeding as well, but forecast models already put ahead of the event of seeing this record-breaking rainfall, a year at least worth of rain falling in the space of one day. And with a warmer climate, we expect those clouds to hold a lot more moisture. So we start to see more in the way of extreme rainfall. But over the coming days, the heaviest of the rain, as I said, is going to be across parts of Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And certainly to southern parts of Iran is where we see the greatest risk of yet further flooding.
Okay. So again, like you're seeing the uniparty's media apparatus run out to say, this is not cloud seeding. It's not cloud seeding. Stop talking about cloud seeding. It's not cloud seeding. However, the scientific community had a different take. This is a week later. We have from Met Matters, which is the Royal Meteorological Society. They put out an article and they say Dubai floods and cloud seeding. That's the title of the article. And then they start out by, laying out everything that guy just said in the report about how much rain had fallen and how unusual it was. And they have images of like the airport flooding. I mean, these airplanes are literally just sitting in like these lakes of water now. And it says, they give some theories for why this might have happened. Here is a time lapse. If I can get this thing to, why is this? For some reason that website seems to have frozen. Let me see if I can open this video on X. Weird. Well, anyway, yeah, there was a time lapse thing, but maybe it's a bad link. So let's see. It says, so it offers some potential explanations for why this might have happened, even though it's seemed really, really far fetched. And then it says, what about cloud seeding? It says, luckily, the storms were well forecast up to a week in advance, showing just how important early warning systems are. However, the intensity of the downpours did spark stories about cloud seeding. And it goes on to say, yes, the UAE does have an operational cloud seeding program, not a surprise given the predominantly arid nature of the region. Cloud seeding usually involves spreading fine particles into individual developing clouds that wouldn't normally lead to rain. Small planes burning salt flares fly through the developing clouds, hoping that the tiny particles produced will act as a cloud condensation nuclei and trigger the formation of water droplets and eventually rain. But in this case, the clouds were part of a large weather system advancing across the region and already predicted to produce substantial amounts of rain across a wide area. Any possible effect from cloud seeding would be tiny in comparison. So the tales of cloud seeding simply don't make sense and are a distraction from the most likely guilty party, climate change. The UAE National Center of Meteorology later confirmed that no cloud seeding mission had taken place. Okay. And so you may recall this story coming out because this was the first time that they actually admitted that cloud seeding was real. Up until this point, it was complete conspiracy theory, even though there were images of planes that were clearly outfit with something that looked like, spraying mechanisms with tanks inside. It looked like there were definitely mechanisms that on planes that were used to spray something into the air at high altitudes. But this is them admitting, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, we have cloud seeding, and yes, like the UAE has cloud seeding. Of course, it's a desert country, but we promise, even though we were lying to you the entire time about cloud seeding, this time it wasn't cloud seeding. Okay. Gotcha. Then we get, from Prevention Web. This would have been, I think this is it 4 days later? When was this article published? This article was published. Yes, I think it's a few days after this article that we just read through. We get April 24th, 2024. It may have been the same day. The weather experiment that really flooded Dubai, a reckless experiment in Earth's atmosphere, caused a desert metropolis to flood. So now this outlet's like, yeah, actually, it probably was cloud seeding. That was the story last week when more than a year's worth of rain fell in a day on the Arabian Peninsula, one of the world's driest climates. Desert cities like Dubai in the UAE suffered floods that submerged motorways and airport runways. Across UAE and Oman, 21 people lost their lives. The heavy rain of Tuesday, April 16th, was initially blamed on cloud seeding, a method of stimulating precipitation by injecting clouds with tiny particles that moisture can attach to. Those droplets then merge and multiply. As the waters recede, however, a more disturbing explanation emerged. And so then, let's see, Richard Washington, a professor of climate science at the University of Oxford, has seen the inside of a storm to confirm if cloud seeding really could breed record-breaking rain. He once boarded an aeroplane bound for a thundercloud over South Africa, Mozambique border. So, of course, this guy must know what he's talking about. He's been on an airplane before, guys. He knows what he's talking about. And he says, no, this is definitely climate change. He's like, yeah, I'm an expert in cloud seeding. Cloud seeding is definitely a thing, but this wasn't cloud seeding. Okay. Yeah. So again, the allegation, like in this theory that we're evaluating here, is that cloud seeding was used to pull rain to the Gulf Arab states away from Iraq, away from Syria, away from the Tigris Euphrates River Basin, but also away from Iran, to dry out Iran. And so the point would be, even if the rain fell in the Indian Ocean, right? It's like, at least it's not falling in Iran. And the point, I think, is to dry out, as the theory goes, is to dry out Iran and have them suffer from suffer from severe drought. Okay. So then we have this post, which is, if I can, I'm just trying to find the right post that has, thought I had it. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so this is from an account, TTXUORR. It's an Arabic account, and it looks like they have is that the Palestinian flag? It's either the Palestinian flag or it's either the Palestinian flag or the Bahrainian flag. But it says, as we previously pointed out, that might be the UAE flag, because I think the Palestinian flag is a red triangle, not a black one. Anyway, as we previously pointed out, this is the post, and which some denied, the truth became clear today. Sorry, just lost my place. The American radar stationed in the Gulf countries were like the accursed devil over the region, depriving the Arab and Islamic nations of even drops of rain, and no sooner had Iran destroyed them than the merciful downpour poured forth, and the earth became gardens with rivers flowing beneath them. The world has never seen anything more vile or filthier than America and Israel, and even more heinous than that, the neighboring countries that hosted this satanic technology. God Almighty spoke the truth when he said, and when he turns away, he strives to spread the corruption throughout the land and destroy crops and progeny. But God does not love corruption. And that, I guess it's from the Quran. It says, Iran, the sacred rod on earth with which God disciplines the oppressors. Okay, so then it shows these two pictures of two different radar stations. I assume this first one is in UAE, but this second one, I'm pretty sure this is the one that's in Qatar. And let's see. I can then show you this article. And this is from NDTV World. This is from March 3rd, 2026. Iran claims largest U.S. radar in Gulf destroyed, all about $1 billion machine. IRGC claimed that the radar was completely destroyed in a precision missile strike. It was later corroborated by Qatari officials. And there's the same picture of that same structure we saw. It says the radar was stationed at the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. That's where CENTCOM is based out of. The attack by U.S. and Israel and Iran has expanded into a wider Middle East conflict and has not just cost lives, but saw the destruction of military weapons worth billions of dollars. Several reports in the Iranian media have claimed that ANFPS-132, the largest American radar in the Gulf, has been destroyed. Citing IRGC Public Relations Office, Tehran Times, and other outlets said that the radar has a tracking range of 5,000 kilometers. Both U.S. President Donald Trump and Iranian authorities have said the conflict will continue for a long time. Radars such as ANFPS-132 are indispensable for modern air defense systems because they enable timely detection, tracking, and interception. As per a report in Defense Security Asia, the early warning system is stationed at the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar and has a unique equipment designed for tracking ballistic missiles. It was installed by the United States in 2013 at a cost of approximately $1.1 billion. Okay, so that line right there is why I took all the time to take us on a side quest with Kevork and the Qatari defense minister. Because remember, according to the Qatari defense minister, Tamim comes into power. His father, Hamad, this is the Qatari leader, resigns or abdicates in June of 2013. Tamim steps in, and Bandar bin Sultan, who is in Saudi Arabia, takes over the file from Qatar. And then he raises $2 trillion, right, and says, we're going to work now. That same year that this happens is when this radar system is built in Qatar at a cost of approximately $1.1 billion. IRGC claimed that the radar was completely destroyed in the precision missile strike. It was later corroborated by Qatari officials, representing a severe disruption to U.S. surveillance operations that could be a blow to integrated air defense architecture protecting allied Gulf states. The system was specifically tuned to monitor Iranian missile activities building up to the attack, which the U.S. named Epic Fury. Washington assembled its largest force and armada in some of its most powerful weaponry. Among these are the B-2 bombers, the Batwing. Yeah, and then it goes on to talk about the B-2 bombers. The list released by U.S. CENTCOM on Sunday includes low-cost unmanned combat attack systems, one-way drones. According to CNN, the drone is essentially a knockoff of the Iranian-designed Shahed 136 drone that Russia has used in large numbers in its war on Ukraine. Then it goes on to talk about the Patriot and THAAD systems. Then there's another article from Defense Security Asia. This is the one that it's citing, where it talks about, it corroborates this and says the same thing. And then it shows a video of the smoldering. Right, so there's there's the burning rubble of the radar base. Now, what we don't have, so just to recap, we have geographic. We can substantiate the theory that the geography makes sense, right? The Tigris Euphrates River Basin, all of that all lines up with the theory, right? And then these videos we're seeing all over the place of these dams like flowing water, right? We can substantiate that there has been historic droughts in these regions for many, many years. Purportedly, maybe the worst drought in 900 years, according to NASA. We can also substantiate that this trend is reversed in the past month or two in some places, and over the past year in other places like Iraq. So that doesn't quite substantiate the theory, because if it was happening before this radar station was taken down, then what the hell? Why? Does the radar station have anything to do with it? I don't know. But the theory then is the thing that we can't substantiate, or we can't, provide any evidence for, is whether this radar station had anything to do with HARP or weather modification. However, we can confirm that official sources, have said that the UAE does have a cloud seeding technology and cloud seeding system. And part of the theory is that there is another radar base that was destroyed in the UAE. And the UAE has taken the most missiles of any place. I think that it's something like 2,500 missiles, and Israel has actually only taken half as many missiles as the UAE. Now, just to play devil's advocate here, since seeing this morning, every time I open a new tab in X, there's a new post from somebody talking about this theory. So that makes me a little cautious, because I'm like, is this like a psyop that's being pushed, right? So here's one. It says, I started to believe the Iraq's climate has been subjected to destruction. Ever since the American radars were destroyed, the rains and clouds no longer leave Iraq. The water levels of the rivers, marshes, and dams have risen, and the lands have turned green again, as if the earth has been renewed. For the first time, the Diyala River swallows palm trees and exceeds its natural boundaries. The Diyala River would be a tributary of the Tigris River, originating in the Zagros Mountains of western Iran. So this picture that we're seeing purportedly is in western Iran. And then we have another picture. This is in Mosul. So this is from that same account. It says Lake Zamar in Mosul. It disappeared from the map last summer. You can see it on the right. And then it says, but now, as seen in the video, it has returned to normal and even more beautiful. So the allegation is that on the right, we're looking at 1 year ago, and on the left, we're looking at the same lake now. So here is another one. The Darbadan Khan Dam has returned to 100% capacity. Underground water sources have also started to overflow. Let's see. I wanted to find the one with the bridge. I have one more with the bridge. Okay, and then this is from the Iranian embassy in France. So this is interesting, because all of a sudden we're getting these posts from these Iranian embassies, and it says in the east of Mazandaran, which is north of Iran, the Golord Dam experiences its first spring without filling restrictions. The completion of the infrastructure, including the largest bridge in northern Iran, gives birth to new landscapes where water, forest, and engineering harmoniously blend. So suddenly Iran is posting about like water resources and dams. Here is another one. The water volume in the Mosul Dam has reached 7 billion cubic meters of its 11 billion cubic meter capacity. The Middle East has suddenly become blessed with abundance. Do you think this is a coincidence? Daily News Iran posted the same thing. And then the one that I really wanted was the Iran embassy in Zimbabwe. They posted an interesting one today. Where was it? I thought they posted it today. Hold on. I sent a screenshot to my friends. Give me 1 second. So this is from yesterday. They were posting this. So yesterday they posted rain, rain, rain after years of drought. Who knows? Perhaps it is a gift from God for our resistance against the devil. And then there's a video of this looks like Tehran. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that golden dome, I'm pretty sure is the mosque in Tehran, with the black flag flying over it, and it's pouring rain. And so even like the Iranian government is posting and saying, perhaps it's a gift from God for fighting this war. So that's interesting. So again, like the theory, I think is an interesting theory. We don't know if it's real or not. I mean, we're just looking at data right now, but assuming it is true, like let's just, for the sake of argument, assuming this is true, this would support the idea, like, why would President Trump be doing this? Why would President Trump be like having this war? Why would he be allowing missiles to fly back and forth and destabilizing the region? Well, I think there's a number of things that spin out from this. I think there's probably potentially sites in Iran that need to be taken out. Like, I'm certainly open to that possibility. But the thing that always kind of gave me a little bit of pause on that is just the idea that of fighting an empire, right? And taking down empire. And it seems like there are all these different countries that have been fighting against this empire, right? That some people would describe it as an American empire. I don't think it's American at all. I think it's something that's very, very different. It's, I think it's more Israeli than American, but frankly, I think it's more transnational than just Israeli. I think that's an oversimplification to say it's just Israel. But whenever I see these countries fighting back against the empire, I sympathize with them. However, that doesn't mean that those countries themselves don't have bad elements within them that need to be addressed. Syria could also be another potential example, because now all of a sudden we're seeing Syria like come back to life. And, the allegation was that there was tons of corruption within the military ranks that were there before Bashar al-Assad even came into power. And that, that developed during his father's rule. His father was in office for 30 years. Before he took over, and he only took over because his brother died. He was an eye surgeon in London before that happened. Okay, so to that point, let's now go to we may not even get to Lebanon today with everything happening, but I'm going to try to. Okay, so this is a good post about this, but there's more to it than just this. It says the Hajjaz Railway, the artery of unity against the sledgehammers of demolition. The historic Hajjaz Railway comes back to life, not just a railway track, but the great passage that connects the heart of the Arabian Peninsula to Europe via Jordan and Syria. While the big players move to link continents and build bridges of economy and sovereignty, the functional states insist on wallowing in the mud of fragmentation, a vast gulf between leaderships that open pathways of development and entities addicted to embracing separatists and supporting militias to tear apart homelands, as we see today in Somaliland, southern Yemen, and the afflicted Sudan. And so the Hajjaz Railway, for those who are not familiar, if you've ever seen the movie Lawrence of Arabia, the train that they attack, and the train is still sitting in the desert. It's become like a monument. They've made it like a historic monument. But the train that they attack and they derail, that's the Hajjaz Railway. It's a train that you can see right here from the Ottoman Empire that ran from Damascus all the way down to Medina. Okay, this is what it looked like in 1914 at the beginning of World War I. And yeah, like Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence from Britain, famously went to Arabia. He rallied all the tribes and convinced them to work together to attack the Ottoman Empire. And one of the big things they did was they took out this train. And so now we're looking at the revival of this train, and that revival is going to require cooperation between all the different countries, which under the Ottoman Empire, were being organized by the Ottoman Empire. So it was a top-down control. But we haven't seen these countries really get along much ever since the collapse of the Ottoman Empire in 1919, really. And so let me pull up that map. That is right. Where'd you go, map? Okay, right here we have this map. So Saudi Transportation Minister Salah Al-Jasir, this is from the Saudi Post. We expect to complete the joint studies for the train connection project between Saudi Arabia and Turkey passing through Jordan and Syria before the end of the year. So this is the revival of the Hajjaz Railway, right? Going from Medina all the way up to this is not Ankara, that is Istanbul. So going all the way up to Istanbul, right? And then from Istanbul, you can then catch a train to anywhere in Europe. So this is going to connect Saudi Arabia to Europe by train. And we've been seeing these deals. Last year, we saw a ton of deals happening, connecting, Trump is investing $4 billion in building trains in Kazakhstan. Putin is investing billions of dollars in building out the largest high-speed rail network in Russia. During the Biden administration, Putin and Iran and the other countries around the Caspian Sea, which is this sea up here next to the Black Sea, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, they built a railroad that goes all the way around the Caspian Sea. That's part of the north-south transportation corridor. So this appears to be real. They're going to be building this Hajjaz Railway. This is separate. Remember we've been looking at pipelines coming out of Iraq going into Syria, pipelines coming out of Iraq going into Saudi Arabia. Now we have a pipeline going from Saudi Arabia through Syria to Turkey. Damascus and Aleppo are going to be the two really major stops there. Aleppo is a major economic hub. And Damascus, of course, is the capital of Syria. Those are both cities, the two largest cities in Syria. So anyway, that is all connected to this. And then in addition to that, because on that same vein, we have from Disclosed TV, right here, Jelani.
We confirm our.
All right, listen to this.
This is why we confirm our commitment also to the initiative of the 4 Cs, and this actually focuses on the importance of bridging Syria with Asia and the Gulf and Europe. What has been achieved today is a good start to pave the way for the 11th of the next month, whereby which we are going to inaugurate the very high VIP political dialogue with Europe. And we are heading towards this date in order to consecrate the strategic role of Syria that wishes to integrate also the European space and to foster cooperation and partnership with our friends.
Okay, so this is at the Cyprus, no, I'm sorry, that's just the Cyprus EU Council of the EU, Cyprus President of the Council of the EU. Okay, and he says you can see the President of the European Union right next to him, and then I believe this is the president of Cyprus, and then a few other leaders from, I think, Europe and the Middle East. And what he's referring to when he says the Four Seas project, I got to look into what I need to confirm this, but I think what he's alluding to, and this is like, if this is true, this is it is true. He just said it, but this is a devolution proof, I guess you'd say, like a Syrian devolution proof, because remember, Matt Arrett taught us all about the 5C vision, right? So in 2004, 22 years ago, a few years after Assad came into power, he came into power, I believe, in 2000 or 2001. He had this thing called the 5Cs vision. And because he wanted to focus on economic development and like partnership and kind of getting economic entanglement between all the Middle Eastern countries. And so this is the map. It was a giant railroad network. And the reason it was called the 5Cs network, 5Cs vision, is because it was going to connect 5 seas: the Mediterranean Sea, the Black Sea, the Caspian Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the Red Sea. Now, my speculation is the reason they're calling it the Four Seas vision at this point is because they're probably not doing the Caspian Sea. They're probably leaving Iran out for now. And it's probably just going to be the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Black Sea. But you can see really at the heart of this entire thing is Aleppo. So there's Aleppo right there. That's at the heart of this entire network, right? And it connects you not only to the middle. It doesn't just connect the whole Middle East. It connects you to Egypt, and then from Cairo, and then from Cairo you can take a train to basically anywhere in Africa, anywhere they have a railroad at least. But you can take a train from Cairo all the way down to South Africa. The British, that's what Cecil Rhodes built for the British, right? And then they gave him Rhodesia as a reward for doing that. So this is Jelani resurrecting an Assad initiative from 22 years ago and basically repackaging it as something that just excludes Iran. But Iran has already built out its rail network with Putin. They were doing that during the Biden administration. So, they already built out what is drawn right here, which was drawn 22 years ago. They've built out the railway from Tehran to Bandar Abbas. Bandar Abbas is now a major port, right? Part of the North-South transportation corridor. I'm pretty sure they've built out from Tehran to Basra. So they have I think their rail network is already in place. They're just not mentioning it as part of this other initiative. They're focusing now on building out the rail network in traditional Arabia. And this is going to be, if this is true, then this means that Jelani is Assad, just without the name Assad. He's a continuation of Assad, basically. And this would align with the fact that MBS gave Assad a big hug and brought him back into the Arab League in 2023 after Hillary Clinton kicked Assad and Syria out of the Arab League in 2011. Or maybe it was 2012. So this is a big deal. This is a very big deal. And I think we're going to see more information and more news come out that confirms that this is what's happening, and that this cooperation between all these different countries in the Middle East that traditionally have not gotten along, and they haven't been able to cooperate in generations, right? Really since the Ottoman Empire, suddenly they're now working together. Yeah, and at the same time, their weather is improving. Their rainfall is coming back. Their crops are going to be coming back. This is very encouraging. Very, very encouraging. Okay, so with the last 15 minutes that we have, let's pivot to the big news story of the day, which we didn't start with, and I'm glad we didn't, because we would have spent the whole time talking about it. And that would be the Lebanese ceasefire deal that Trump negotiated. Okay, so Trump negotiates this ceasefire deal with Lebanon, between Israel and Lebanon, right? He announces it. Let's go to the Badlands Substack. I'm pretty sure I have the post in the Substack. Hopefully I put it in there. No, but I do have videos that I want to play. So let me see if I can show the. So Trump announces this deal. He's like, Lebanon is there's gonna be a 3-week ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. And what's interesting is that we get this reporting from a journalist in Israel who I think is pretty solid, Ben Aframe. He did a solid post about the involvement that MBS had in basically like piecing this whole thing together. Optically, we were told in the West that it was like Mike Huckabee who did this. It was like Mike Huckabee and like the American envoys who put this whole thing together. But it actually sounds more like, from all the reporting that's coming out of the region, that it's actually MBS who did this, and not the American envoys. I mean, I'm sure the American envoys probably played, like, Kushner and Wickoff may have played a role in it. Here it is. So this is from yesterday. It says the driver behind the ceasefire in Lebanon is Saudi Arabia. MBS pressured Trump to impose a ceasefire in Israel and is deeply invested in the Lebanon track. His special envoy Yazid bin Farhan just landed in Beirut. Saudi Arabia is coordinating with both the U.S. and France. Saudi motivations go beyond Lebanon. Riyadh sees Lebanon as an opportunity to complete Iran's disconnection from its western arm. Following Assad's fall in Syria, MBS marketed Syria's al-Shura, that's Jelani, to Trump as a potential wall of separation between Iran and Lebanon, and is now trying to build an axis of Syria and Lebanon free from Iranian influence. But that does not mean necessarily working against Hezbollah. MBS is trying to start a new chapter with the current Lebanese government, despite Hezbollah still being a part of it. The missing piece is Shia buy-in. Saudi Arabia is trying to recruit Nabi Berri, the 88-year-old parliament speaker who holds the Shia card, to join the diplomatic process. Israel sees these diplomatic meetings as constraining rather than helpful. But in this case, MBS got what he wanted while Netanyahu did not. However, Netanyahu will be tempted to undermine this by restarting the war. And it, we got this new guy, this new president, the Lebanese president. His name is Aoun. And when he was elected last year, like, it was Joseph Aoun, he highly touted as like, he's MBS's guy. Like this guy, like, even to the point where the haters were all saying that he was a puppet of Saudi Arabia. He's a Maronite Christian, this guy right here, just Joseph Aoun. He comes into office in 2025. And then Joseph Aoun comes out and says, because remember, Lebanon and Israel met for the first time last week ever at the White House to negotiate a potential ceasefire. They started this whole process, and they both come out and they said, look, we haven't gotten to a ceasefire yet. However, we can both agree that Hezbollah is the enemy, and we both want to see. This is like what the Israeli diplomat was saying on camera. He said, we can both agree that Hezbollah is the enemy, and we all want to see Hezbollah disarmed. So we can at least agree on that. That's the common ground. However, then Aoun comes out after the fact, and he accuses Netanyahu of war crimes. He says that Netanyahu has engaged in war crimes against Lebanon by killing this journalist. So, and it's not Aoun, actually, it's Nawaf Salam, the prime minister. But the reporting is now that there's 27 Lebanese journalists, I wrote about this today in the news brief, that have been killed, that have been targeted by the Israeli military, by the IDF. This woman was the one that kind of like pissed off everybody, because everybody claims that they know her. All these people across the media landscape say they know this woman personally and that she's a very good person. She's a very nice person. She is pro Hezbollah apparently, but she's Lebanese, and they intentionally targeted her. The reporting goes that she was sent like a week ago or 2 weeks ago a threatening message on like WhatsApp or like one of those messaging apps that basically told her to like stop what she was doing and stop reporting on this, or else she was going to be killed. And then she was killed. They pulled her body out of the rubble. They then there was a list of other deaths, deaths of journalists. Let's see, I put that in the news brief this morning, including people's their home is being bombed. It says the killing is the latest in a string of attacks on media workers. On March 28th, an Israeli strike on a clearly marked press car in southern Lebanon killed Al-Manar correspondent Ali Shoaib, Al-Mayadeen reporter Fatima Fatouni, and video journalist Mohammed Fatouni. Israel claimed Shoaib was a Hezbollah intelligence operative, but provided no evidence. Al-Manar TV journalist Hussein Hammoud was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Nabatea on March 25th, while Lebanese radio presenter Ghada Daik was killed when Israel struck her home in Tyre on April 8th. So they're even blowing up their houses. And so the Lebanese government, which a week ago was okay, maybe we can work with y'all, is now accusing Israel of war crimes because they're just indiscriminately killing journalists that are reporting on what's happening in southern Israel. Meanwhile, we have let me pull up this one. Meanwhile we have Bezalel Smotrich, y'all know him, coming out saying that it's time for Israel to formally redraw. So here's from the Middle East Monitor. 27 journalists have been killed in Israeli attacks in Lebanon, according to their press union. According to the Lebanese Press Syndicate editors, which is a group of it's like a press union, 27 have been killed, I guess, in the past month. And let's see, So here, Israel is waiting for U.S. to greenlight to renew Iran war. New targets marked, says Israel Katz. It should come as no surprise that Netanyahu, this is from Tyler Durden at Zero Hedge, it should come as no surprise that Netanyahu's government is not happy with the current lull in the Iran war, as Trump's initially declared 3 to 5 day ceasefire extension has become more of an indefinite truce with the Hormuz Strait blockade still on. Israel is now preparing for the possibility of a return to fighting. The country's media is on Thursday reporting Israel's leadership has consistently stated that it wants to see regime change or else total government and societal collapse, saying that only then would Iran never more be a threat to Israel. Fresh remarks by Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz have made clear that Israel is prepared to renew the war against Iran. The IDF is prepared for both defense and offense. The targets are marked. But that's not the article. It was, yeah. So Ynet, this is, I think, did we talk about this on Tuesday? I don't know if we did or not. I don't think we did. So Ynet, which is Ynet Global, this is the largest online media publication in Israel. They reported initially when Trump said, "Hey, I'm extending the ceasefire by 3 weeks. I'm extending the ceasefire, right? I'm extending the ceasefire between Iran and Israel." Ynet comes out and says, "Yeah, we've actually been told, an Israeli official told us that a U.S. official told them that it's going to be only until Sunday. So Sunday, if there's not a deal, we're gonna just continue the war." Trump has come out. First, Caroline Leavitt came out, and then Trump came out and said, "No, that's not true. It's indefinite. We're not putting a timetable on this because there's so much disarray among the leadership in Iran. There's no centralized leadership. It's so decentralized that there is no leadership in Iran." And yeah, I mean, this audience understands what that means. That means, I think he's referring to devolution, right? But that is the fact that Israel's coming out and trying to say, "Oh, it's a 3 to 5 day ceasefire," and then Trump and Caroline Leavitt come out and say, "No, this is indefinite. We're working on getting a deal done." And then this is the post I was looking for earlier. The President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, and Ambassador to Lebanon, Michelle Issa, met today with high-ranking representatives of Israel and Lebanon in the Oval Office. The meeting went very well. The United States is going to work with Lebanon in order to help protect it itself from Hezbollah, the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon will be extended by 3 weeks. I look forward in the near future to hosting the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, and the President of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun. It was a great honor to be a participant in this very historic meeting, President Donald J. Trump. And then we also have Tom Barrack, yet again, this is from yesterday, reiterating that Hezbollah cannot be eliminated. The idea that you're going to disarm Hezbollah by force is just as silly as the idea that you're going to disarm the American people by force. It's just not going to happen. So get that idea out of your head. The only way forward is to negotiate a meaningful peace that all sides can live with, so all sides can agree to put down the weapons and stop fighting. So here's the U.S. This is Donald Trump's best friend, right? The guy that he's entrusted to be the ambassador to Turkey and the special envoy to Syria, telling you that this isn't going to happen. We're not going to go disarm Hezbollah. We're not going to start a war with Hezbollah. We're going to try to negotiate with Hezbollah. And then Mark Levin has been spinning out about this guy and calling Tom Barrack a traitor and a terrorist sympathizer and the worst person to ever live. And yeah, dude, you're talking about Donald Trump's best friend, so you might want to watch your mouth. Okay, and the other story that I was looking for is Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister. Y'all are very familiar with him, of course, coming out and saying that it's time for Israel to go ahead and just like formally redraw its borders because enough's enough. Wasn't there, it was right here. I think the internet is frozen, it appears. Or at least this website has. Yeah, here it is. All right, the website just wasn't responding. Smotrich calls for new Israeli borders. This is from yesterday. Labels Palestinians as axis of evil. Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has said the country needs wider and defensible borders in Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria, describing Palestinians as part of what he calls an Iranian axis of evil. Smotrich said the 1967 lines were indefensible borders as they do not take into account geographical and security considerations, according to the Jerusalem Post. He also claimed the Palestinians in Gaza and the occupied West Bank are part of the Iranian axis of evil, dismissing criticism of settler violence as misleading campaigns. The minister said settlers were among the least violent people, adding that all measures taken in the West Bank had been coordinated with the United States. He added that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu supports expanding settlements in the West Bank, saying Israel continues its settlement activity with full support and coordination with the U.S. administration. Smotrich said that although U.S. President Donald Trump has not yet backed applying Israeli sovereignty over the entire West Bank, the Israeli government hopes to achieve this in the future. So they're like, yeah, we're going to convince Trump of this. Don't worry about that. Let's just start the process. Let's go ahead and just start the process of annexing the West Bank, annexing Gaza. Enough's enough. And then here is from today, Israel Katz. Israeli minister says army is awaiting U.S. approval for a potential strike on Iran. So they are locked and loaded, ready to go, just waiting for that green light. I think we just looked at that on a different site. Okay, and then let's round it out with, I guess we can look at this article too, is Iran is ready for both talks and war, according to their envoy. Tehran has never betrayed negotiations, unlike Washington, according to Ambassador Kazim Jalali. Iran is not seeking war, but it is ready to keep fighting. Tehran's ambassador to Moscow, Kazim Jalali, has told RT in an exclusive interview, arguing that the Islamic Republic has never been the side to abandon diplomacy despite repeated stabs in the back. Quote, the general policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran is that if the other side is willing to negotiate, we will negotiate. If they want war, we will fight. So yeah, that's him telling you that we're going to go ahead and do this. Now, I want to place a few clips of Trump before we close down. I know it's 4:00, but we're going to go a little over. because I want to play these clips. Hopefully Substack didn't botch this. Okay. So remember, like Mark Levin and a lot of these other Mossad media influencers have been saying, Trump, go ahead and use nukes. Mossad Levin has been saying this for like weeks now. Go ahead and just nuke Iran. Like, we just need to nuke them and get it over with. You know, Trump came out the day after Easter and said he could potentially annihilate the entire civilization in one night if he really wanted to. And everyone took from that statement that he meant nuking Iran. So here he is yesterday in the Oval Office.
Why would a stupid question like that be asked?
He was asked, are you going to use nukes against Iran? Because, you know, your guy, Mark Levin, has been saying this like nonstop on X.
Why would a stupid question like that be asked? Why would I use a nuclear weapon when we've totally, in a very conventional way, decimated them without it? No, I wouldn't use it. A nuclear weapon should never be allowed to be used by anybody.
Yeah. So there's that. And then there is this one down here. I thought this was this was an interesting statement.
Israel has to, I mean, we're just talking about it. Israel is going to have to defend itself if they're shot at, and they will. I would never say that they can't. It would be nice if they wouldn't have to bother with that. But if something happens, they're going to have to defend themselves, as you know. But they're going to do it carefully, and they're going to be surgical as opposed to beyond surgical. And, you know, there's a lot they can do. But Israel is going to have to defend itself.
Yeah, so I think people are going to hear that, and they're going to say, well, this is just, you know, Trump, you know, letting everyone know that Israel's going to keep fighting because, you know, they got to keep fighting. I take that. I mean, I'm going to play it again, but I want you to listen to what he says. Israel is going to have to defend itself. Like, if you write that out in a written statement and you read it, you're like, all right, so he's saying Israel is going to have to defend itself. The United States is not going to defend Israel for it, right? The U.S. big brother is not coming to little brother's rescue. If little brother gets attacked, little brother is going to defend itself. Israel's going to do what it wants to do. And he said, it'd be nice if we didn't have to do any of it. Like, it'd be nice if they didn't do that. But Israel's going to do what it has to do. I'm going to play it one more time.
Israel has to, I mean, we're just talking about it. Israel is going to have to defend itself if they're shot at, and they will. I would never say that they can't. It would be nice if they wouldn't have to bother with that. But if something happens, they're going to have to defend themselves, as you know. But they're going to do it carefully, and they're going to be surgical as opposed to beyond surgical. And, you know, there's a lot they can do. But Israel is going to have to defend itself.
Yeah. And so, again, in my opinion, what we're looking at is we're looking at Trump encouraging Israel to keep fighting. He's like, yeah, go ahead, keep fighting. That's cool. As he is heading for the door. He's leaving the party. He's telling Israel, yeah, stay out and keep drinking. Okay, stay out and keep having fun. Keep partying. While he's in an Irish goodbye. He's gonna leave. He's gonna make peace. Israel's going to keep fighting, and they're going to be left all by themselves. I think that's what's happening, because look at these headlines. This is from today, from Israel Katz. Israel threatens to bomb Iran back into the Stone Age. Defense Minister Israel Katz made the comment following the indefinite extension of an ongoing truce by the U.S. This was in response to this headline from Trump: no time frame for ending the Iran war. The U.S. president has rejected claims that he is rushing to end the conflict ahead of midterm elections. It says the U.S. president is not setting any deadlines for concluding the war against Iran. The remarks contrast with Trump's earlier claim made shortly after the U.S. and Israel launched attacks on Iran on February 28th that the fighting would last 4 to 5 weeks. He also repeatedly said that over the past month, the war would be over very soon. But again, the no time frame is not for ending the war, but no time frame is for the ceasefire. He's like, the ceasefire, like, meaning the U.S. is not going to bomb Iran anymore. We're done bombing Iran. We're just going to negotiate with them now. That's what I mean, my takeaway from it is. Okay, and then let's pivot to Putin and Russia real quick, and then we'll round this out. Trump would like to see Putin at G20 in Miami. This is from today. The Russian president's presence would be very helpful, the U.S. leader said. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he would like to see his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, at the G20 summit in Miami, but expressed doubt that he would actually come. The Washington Post reported on Thursday that the White House intends to invite Putin to the G20 summit in December, while a senior administration official said Russia would be welcome at both ministerial meetings and the Leaders Summit. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Pokhtyn said that there was already an invitation for Russia to participate at the highest level, but it is too early to say who will attend. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov likewise said Russia will decide closer to the date who will represent Russia. So it sounds like somebody is going to represent Russia. It may or may not be Putin. Trump said he knew nothing of any official invitation yet, but added that if he came, it would probably be very helpful. Quote, I'm of the opinion that you talk to everybody. I'm not one of these guys who says, oh, let's not talk to him. Trump told reporters at the White House on Thursday, if you're a smart person, you have control over your emotions. I'm somebody that believes in talking. I don't know that he's coming. I doubt he'd come, to be honest with you, referring to Putin. And this is scheduled to be, the summit is scheduled to be held in December in Miami, with Trump set to host it at his Doral golf course. So he's literally going to host the G20 at Doral at his golf course. That is hilarious. Okay, and then let's see. Let's finish out with Italy and Russia, because I think it was on Tuesday. Tuesday we talked about that like connection between Israel and Russia, like the Israel-Iran conflict and the Russia-Ukraine conflict via Italy, and how those guys were the Mossad guys were arrested in Milan. Okay, so look at this. This is interesting. Venice Biennale, I think is how you pronounce it. Jury locks out Russia and Israel. The judges have cited disputed war crimes charges against the country's leaders as the basis for their decision. The jury of the Venice Biennale, an annual international cultural exhibit, will not give awards to artists from countries whose leaders are facing charges of crimes against humanity. According to the statement on Thursday, it affects Russia and Israel, whose leaders are subject to international criminal court arrest warrants, something both countries have rejected. And so this is something they hold either annually or biannually every other year. It's different. There's like an architecture one, there's like an art one, I think there's like a performance theater one. They hold this in Venice. Every country has its own like building, like its own permanent pavilion where it presents its art, like whatever it's presenting. And it's put on, I think the art one is put on every year. The architecture one's put on every other year. And so they're saying that here's the Russian pavilion right here. Here's the Israel pavilion right here. And they're saying that they're not going to even recognize any artists who bother showing up from Russia or Israel. That, is what it is. But the other one that I wanted to end on was this story. This is kind of funny. I think this was like hours after our show on Tuesday, maybe even like Wednesday morning. It says Italy responds to shameful U.S. offer to replace Iran at the World Cup. So for those who don't know, Trump put out a post saying that says Italian officials have rebuked a U.S. proposal for their national football team to replace Iran at the upcoming FIFA World Cup. Italy lost the chance to participate at the World Cup for a third successive time after a humiliating penalty shootout defeat in Bosnia in a playoff last month, triggering widespread backlash at home and leading to the resignation of the head of the National Football Federation. However, an American proposal to give Italy Iran's spot at the World Cup, which will be co-hosted by the U.S., Canada, and Mexico this summer, sparked indignation in Rome. The proposal is impossible and inappropriate, Sports Minister Andrea Abodi told the Italian news agency La Presse, stressing, quote, you qualify on the pitch. Economy Minister Giancarlo Giorgetti called the idea shameful. The possibility of a swap was raised by Paolo Zampoli, an Italian-American who heads the Office of Global Partnerships at the U.S. State Department and who described his lobbying efforts to the Financial Times and Corriere della Sera. Zampoli argues that Italy, not Iran, should go to the World Cup and says he would be disappointed if he couldn't see Italian players on home soil. The U.S. war on Iran has cast uncertainty over the Islamic Republic's participation in the tournament. Iranian officials have issued mixed signals, with some calling for the team's matches to be relocated from the U.S. to Mexico. FIFA President Gianni Infantino who is a Swiss-born and also holds Italian citizenship, has maintained that Iran is expected to compete in the U.S. The International Association referred to his remarks when asked about Zampoli's pitch. The media described the envoy's lobbying as an attempt to repair newly strained U.S.-Italy relations. Tensions escalated after President Donald Trump criticized Pope Leo and later Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who rebuked him for targeting the pontiff. According to Corriere della Sera, that's a newspaper, I believe, securing the participation of Italy, who are 4-time World Cup winners, could also carry domestic political benefits for Trump, potentially boosting Republican support among Italian-American voters ahead of November's midterm elections. Separately, media reports last week stated that Trump's special envoy for combating anti-Semitism, Rabbi Yehuda Kaplan, warned European officials they could face travel restrictions during the World Cup in retaliation for alleged lapses in addressing the issue. Yeah, this is just like one of those goofy, like Trumpomania things. Trump first was like putting out posts a while back saying, you know, Iran should be careful about coming to the U.S. Like they may not be safe in the U.S., which is a silly thing for the U.S. president to say, like inferring that his own country isn't safe for foreign tourism, even countries that you're at war with. And then this guy Zampoli from the State Department comes up with this weird idea to just kick out Iran and just just allow Italy to come in because they're such a historic champion of the World Cup. They've won it 4 times, which I think Brazil's probably won it the most, Brazil and Argentina. But I mean, that's still a lot of championships, 4 times. And so Trump was even talking about that. He was like, oh yeah, that's kind of a cute idea. Like maybe I'd think about that. And then Italy comes out and was like, yeah, we would never do that. That's like, we don't believe, I think Meloni came out and said, we don't believe in participation trophies. Thanks, but no thanks. So just goofy stuff, but like, it's just this weird thing where Trump is kind of like pretending to not get along with Meloni. It's all really goofy and silly, but I don't know. Just wanted to mention that. All right, guys, hit the thumbs up. I think we'll land it there. We actually got to a lot more than I anticipated today, so happy about that. We do have some Badlands boosts to read. So if you are listening to this on replay, you can go to badlandsmedia.tv/boost. It's like leaving a Rumble rant anytime, and we will read it on the show. So we have a couple from Thomas Times. First one is, hey Ghost, thanks for all the geography with your shows. I love maps so much. I annoy my wife while watching TV, even fantasy shows, because I get so much more out of the story when I understand the geography at play. I totally agree. I think when you understand the geography, it makes the show more compelling. Like it makes anything more compelling, whether you're talking about works of fiction or, geopolitics. But yes. So the other one, Thomas Times, it's actually the exact same post, just a second time. So thank you for posting that twice. I don't know if you meant to do that, but appreciate the rants, the boosts. Another one from Eileen Mashad 17. I've been following Mark Levin on Truth, and he is getting hammered on his Israel takes. Clearly, people are waking up to Bibi sabotaging Trump and not really wanting peace. Thanks, G, for keeping us off the cliff. Yeah, I mean, I think that's my read on it. But I think that Trump is also like feeding their hubris and like encouraging them just to keep going, while he's heading for the door. So yeah, I think I would agree with all that. Tattoo Teacher coming in at the wire. $10. Thanks, Ghost. Your content is top notch. Thank you, Tattoo Teacher. Appreciate you. Missed you in Nashville. Hope to see you in Deadwood. All right, guys. I will be on the narrative on Sunday night. So Sunday night, 9:00 with Burning Bright. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. Hit the thumbs up on your way out of here. Everyone have a great weekend. Happy Friday. And I should have been paying more attention because I didn't start the music, but I'll do it now. Bye, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video.
And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.